How do I leave money to my child who isn't able to manage money? My name is Andrew Ayers. I'm an estate planning and business law attorney with offices in Edina, Minnesota, and New York City. And today we'll look at an interesting decision that many parents have to make. When you have a child who's just not good with money, what do you do to protect their inheritance? So this is a common question I get when I have meetings with clients who have a variety of children, or even maybe just one. And that is they've spent a lifetime creating estate planning or savings plans for themselves, and they are great with money, but for whatever reason, their child, one of them or maybe multiple, just isn't good with money. I recently worked on a probate case where the children of the estate seemed to spend $2 for every dollar that came in. They received life insurance proceeds, and they pretty much spent the money the day after that check hit their account. And we're talking about a lot of money. So the question is, when we have a child like that, who's not particularly financial savvy, and you're worried about what can I do with the inheritance, because I really don't want to give an 18-year-old all of that money at one time in a lump sum when I die. And so what we need to do is look through a few different factors and consider what's the best way to leave that inheritance for that child. The decision really comes down to, are you comfortable with them getting the full amount of money? Would you prefer that they get it in chunks over time, or do you want to have very strict rules on when they can get the money? And if you've watched enough videos online, if you've read enough blogs, you probably know the answer to how we're going to do this. And that answer is with a trust. So if a child is under 18, we need a trustee anyway, because they can't inherit the money directly, and we need somebody to manage the money until they at least turn the age of 18. However, most of my clients will say, wait a second, I don't want to just give an 18-year-old all of this money. Let's say I have a $5 million life insurance policy. I don't want to just hand over $5 million to them on their 18th birthday. So what we can do is, with a trust, we can create rules and discretionary distributions and other structures for this child to make sure that we're giving them money when they need it, but not a ton of money all at one time. And so this is the question of, are we going to leave the money to them outright, which we can do under a will, and they get it all at the age of 18, or do we put it into a trust? And once it's in that trust, the trustee has directions from you, and you can write this up in the trust exactly how you want that money managed for your child. So if we're looking at the trust, you can probably see a very important decision right off, and that's going to be who is going to be the trustee. So if you're setting up a trust right now, it's a revocable living trust most likely, you can be the trustee while you're alive. But the question is, when you're gone, who is going to be the trustee to manage the money for your children? And it doesn't have to be a family member. You can choose companies and professional trustees if you would like, but you need to know that if you go that route, you're going to end up paying them a fee. Or more properly, your estate, the money in the trust is going to go a portion to the people managing it and then the rest to your child. So you're not going to be leaving everything to them. Now, there are cases where you may want to consider using a professional trustee, because even though you're paying money, they can give you the strictness, they can give you the regulations you need to protect that money for your children. So what we can have happen is, after you're gone, the money goes into the trust, and you can actually set up a system where, let's say there's $1 million in the trust, but it's invested and it's kicking off money every year. We call that income. And so many of my clients will say, let's take that $1 million. From the ages of 18 to 21, my child can have the income kicked off to them, as well as, for example, college tuition. And then after they graduate, they get the income every year, and then at age 25, they get half of what's left, and then at age 30, they get the other half of what's left. But in that time period, you can also allow for other distributions. So you can, for example, say, I will also allow for distributions to happen for college expenses, like we talked about, to buy a first house, for wedding expenses, or maybe to start a business. Or maybe there's something else that's important to you and your family. Maybe you could use that money to buy some piece of property, that, an old family cabin that's in the family that you want to keep in the family. So there can be a variety of ways you can do this in the trust to make sure you're protecting the legacy and protecting that money from being spent by an 18-year-old. And that's the big question that a lot of my clients have for me. And it's going to be interesting for you. I want you to tailor it directly to your case of what age do you get those principal distributions. So you don't have to do 18, you don't have to do 21. I just gave you an example of 25 and 30. You don't have to do that either. You can do 35, you can do 40, you can do whatever you want to do with this. You set up the structure, you set up the timing, but also consider discretionary distributions. So discretionary distributions are going to be in your trust, where you say, I have a set standard for how money will be distributed to my child, but we also have discretion for the trustee to give money in other circumstances. So for example, the discretion to give the money for college. So we want the child to be able to go to college. There's $1 million in the trust. Let's use the trust to be able to give discretionary distributions for college, but we don't want the discretion to go out and buy a new Tesla. That's not what we want the money to do. But all of this is the way you design your trust and what you want those rules and regulations to look like for your trustee and for how you want them to manage your money after you're gone. Now, at the end of all this, when all the money has been spent, that'll be the end of the trust. You can figure out how you want to do this and at what age you want to do it. You can have it tied to the oldest child, to the youngest child's age, whatever you'd like to do. That's one of the main benefits of the trust, is you're able to set up this world after you're gone. You set up the way it's going to work, how your inheritance is going to be distributed, when it gets distributed. It's a little control. So it's interesting because we often say you can't really control things from beyond the grave, but using a trust is one of those situations where you can actually control things beyond the grave. However, if you don't use a trust and your child just gets the money at the age of 18, well, then you aren't controlling anything. They just get whatever you've left them. They can spend it on whatever they like, and you're gone, so you can't really say anything at that point. So hopefully you can see the importance of using a trust if you have that child who you're worried about money management with. If you have more questions, you want to talk about this further, you can go to my website, 𝙁𝙊𝙇𝙊𝙒. There's a legal strategy session button on the front page. It's big and it's red. It'll take you to my scheduling page where we can find a convenient time to hop on a 15 or 20-minute phone call called a legal strategy session, where we can go through trusts and children and spending and all the issues we've talked about in this video. If you liked the video, I'd appreciate it if you hit the like or the thumbs up button below. You can head on over to YouTube or 𝙁𝙊𝙇𝙊𝙒.com and subscribe, and I hope to see you on our next video.